In response to overproduction of Sauvignon Blanc grapes, the Marlborough Wine Research Centre is using mechanical thinning to regulate the crop. They used a modified harvester to control yield by shaking away excess berries.
The issue basically is that the industry needs to have techniques to manage its crop levels, particularly in seasons where yields are likely to be well above average. There are a number of basic questions. First of all, can we do it? Can we set a machine up to, in a controlled way, take off a proportion of the fruit according to our requirements? How do we measure and assess how much fruit we're taking off? We know from the Australian work and subsequently from our own work that if we just gather up the fruit underneath the vine once the machine's gone through, then we're only looking at a proportion of the fruit that is effectively being removed. A certain proportion gets damaged and shrivels on the vine, bunches get damaged and are retained within the canopy. So we reckon that we're probably, when we gather up the fruit, we're probably looking at about 60% of the reduction in yield so far.
Yeah. So this is the area here we aren't getting thin yet. Yeah. And you can see the bunches are quite a lot denser and closer together.
We need to know a lot more about how to set the machines up to control the thinning. One of the interesting things is that based on our initial 2 years' work, we had people this year coming and having a look and seeing what we were doing in practice, and then they went away to their own vineyard and have tried it out themselves. So it's very much research into practice in a very quick process. Basically what we've done is we've taken the leaves off the vine so you can actually see the whole fruit zone. Not a usual practice, but it does. These vines have not been thinned, and you can see that the bunches are quite big, they're quite dense, the berries are popping off as they grow, and in some cases we're getting botrytis starting to show as a result of that. Now, one of the things that we're finding with the machine thinned fruit is that we tend to take out a lot of the smaller berries. We change the architecture of the bunch, and one of the consequences is the bunches become quite a lot looser. If anything, we're tending to reduce the disease levels on the machine thin vines, which is a little bit contrary to what we were expecting. We were expecting to get more disease where maybe a little bit of damage had been done to the bunches shortly after fruit set. The issue that faces the growers is that they don't want to do too much thinning before fruit set, because if we had a cool flowering, then maybe their yields will be depressed. So they tend to leave the thinning until after fruit set. Doing it by hand, doing the thinning by hand, is then very expensive. The advantage that the machines have is that potentially it's relatively cheap. You can cover large areas very quickly, and we end up with hopefully a better product as well.
We need tools that if we have a year where Mother Nature's given us a great bloom and a great set and we have a little bit too much fruit out there, we need a tool that's going to be workable, easy, and quick that we can crop adjust with. Well, there's a lot of advantages. One is that I can thin 2.5 acres an hour with one machine, one man, where it would take me with labor, it would take me multiple of people. Speed and the consistency down the row with a machine is way more consistent than a hand crew. We take all the collector plates out of the bottom, which you can see here, and the actual picking rods that you see in there. We remove some of those picking rods, and those picking rods we will place in the area where we want to modify the crop. We're shaking the fruit with the rods as we would shake it at harvest time, but obviously not at the same RPM settings as you do at the harvest. We've done Riesling, and I'm sure you could do Chardonnay if you needed to. Pinot Noir is not probably destined for this because Pinot Noir is too specific on how you want to thin that and you thin that, and that'll still be a hand thinning job. But on the other varietals, it'll work quite well.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.